let's take a look at, we've been talking about the blueprints, but let's take another look at that emotional blueprint that we carry. And what we had talked about is how you are born into the family emotional blueprint and then your conditioning, but there's also the societal's emotional blueprint and then the bigger society emotional blueprint. And there are all those layers on it. And there's one thing to keep in mind when we're doing light work. And what the goal is to return to the cosmic consciousness of infinite unconditional love. That is our most natural state of being. And so what we're doing is that we're using the vibrations of infinite intelligence, omniscient wisdom, and omnipotent unconditional love to transform those thought patterns that we hold on a human level that keep us as a smaller version of ourselves. And we talked about, and I'd used the spiral before, where when you're going in, it's this spiral, and then you're going through this whole sphere of emotions. If you think of it in terms of like just an asteroid belt where the light moves through it, but there's like all sorts of like little rocks and things like that. And as you're doing the spiral, if you look at it this way, it looks like you're doing a pendulum, but then you eventually drop through it. And I love that phrase in AA that I heard maybe 40 years ago when a friend of mine started going to AA. And the saying is until you hit your rock bottom, you won't step out of the old. And that's so true. And the rock bottom for some could just be a broken nail. It doesn't mean that you have to be, in the gutter, barely able to stand. And it's kind of how we are in every step of our growth and everything that we want to transform is we just hit our brick wall and we just can't do it anymore. That's when we'll really do the light work and not give lip service to it. And I've talked about in the book, How to Make the Most of Your Experience, what happens when you give lip service to it. You just don't get a whole lot of wet, sloppy kisses in return. You get more of what you wanted to change because you're only giving lip service and you're inadvertently creating that more so that you're creating that denser space so that you get that choice point of stepping out. Now, in general, I'm really a proponent of getting to that core. If you can remember that core memory and transform that, then all of the branches will transform. And it's like it is seemingly overnight. And we've talked to all other times about where you go back on the family DNA and it can go back generations. And when you start to see that and you can go back to the origin point of that, you can actually go back through and it will filter out also into your family. But then there's also the ones that are not that strong, but they're firmly anchored. And that's the emotional blueprint that you pick up from your parents that don't have any pain or angst attached to them. It's just you patterned yourself that way because when you came in, that's what you saw and that's what people did. So that's what you did. And so, for example, if somebody is passive and they're always waiting for somebody else to make the decision, it might not be a huge trauma that they experience and say, oh, that's safer that way. It's just in their blueprint, their mental blueprint and the safety zone blueprint emotionally that, yeah, that's just what you do. And so you never really look at it. And just one by one asked, what would you want to say to them that you never had the nerve to say? And it's a wonderful way to give yourself a little mental hiccup and permission to speak your truth. And it was very interesting because oftentimes it's wonderful things that we want to say to somebody. It's not suppressed anger, but it's acts of love and words of love that we never spoke because maybe it wasn't in the emotional blueprint of the family structure to actually speak it out loud. And to be just open and honest and vulnerable and saying, I really appreciate you because boom, 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 boom. Or I have a really strong memory of when I was a child and this is what you gave to me, boom, boom, boom. going through each one of these, and there are all these beautiful acts of affirmation and words of love and all of this. And the light bulb goes off, and then all of a sudden, just relaxing into, and this is really important, when you get a revelation, relax into it. And we've talked about relaxing into emotions and just sitting with them, letting them be. And as you go to that center of that emotion, then you'll drop to the other side and the light will come up through it. And the moment you relax to the other side of it, then the light will transform it into whatever form of illumination it needs to take for where you are right now, for your next step of expanding a paradigm that you live in. But there is no emotional angst connected to it, because it's recognizing that it's just the daily to-do blueprint, emotional blueprint that we get from each other. So the tip that I'd like to share with anybody who comes across this conversation is take a look at whether there's something big that you want to change or not. Just take a look at your last family gathering. And just for each person that's there, say something that you've never had the courage to say before. It will open up your throat, or you will open up your voice body. It will definitely shift your mental body and will create space in your emotional body, whether it's words of love or words of anger that you didn't express. So and feel free to say, I appreciate you, or I really like this about you, and here's why. In listening to that, you'll get a wonderful mirror back to you to start to appreciate that in yourself, or it's something that you do appreciate and you appreciate on a deeper level, or it's something that you can appreciate in yourself that you haven't. But that will open you up to be able to transmit more love. If it's words of anger, or you hurt me when you, then you no longer have to hold that in. It no longer is one of those little rocks in the emotional asteroid belt. And that and they're like little rocks of ice. And when you actually speak it, then the light will move through, and it's like rays of sunshine, and it'll melt it away bit by bit, or at least make it smaller. It depends on, divine light flows where your attention goes, manifests where your intention stays focused, but only to the degree that you allow it on a conscious and subconscious level. So, this is all within our co-creation realm. It'll never go too fast. And if it's going too slow, that's you that's letting it go too slow. But even in those words of anger, then you will create that space in yourself. And also you'll have insight into, you can start to ask yourself, now, why did that make me angry? What was that triggered in me? And then you can give yourself that love that the other person was unable to, because perhaps they either did it inadvertently or they haven't grown to the point to be able to, because their paradigm is holding them back. But in both of those instances, it gives you insights and it gives you self mirrors into what it is that you have not yet seen. And it'll give you that doorway to more emotional freedom and clarity about who you are and how you want to move and express yourself in the world. And then the courage to actually lean into it and live your life in new ways. Now, let's talk for a moment with light work that you can do with your family members, because it's very important that you don't come in evangelistic, don't come in from the head. And your most powerful light work is the light work that's done behind the scenes. And so this is very much connected with a different way to use the basic activation of divine light vibrations guided meditation. So you've done the basic activation. Now, divine light is coming from infinity within. You send it, you let it flow through your divine soul knowing, from your divine soul to the divine soul of the specific person that you're wanting to do the light treatment for. So the divine in me is sending light to the divine in you, but you're not pushing for it to be used in any particular way. You are simply sending the light so that it will magnify and multiply the light that divine soul is sending up to his or her own ego intellect. And then from the human heart to the human heart, because obviously you want to do the light work, your human heart's in the right place. So send it from your human heart to their human heart. And what that will do is it will open up your mind and also your heart on deeper levels to engage with them on a mental level in different ways and give them more space to grow into you and give you more space to grow into a deeper conversation with them. And so with those two levels going on, and you don't need to even visualize it, just trust that the light is doing the work. And then the way you can engage your human ego intellect so that you're 100% involved, but you're still staying in a neutral space to let the light do the work. You can say, I love you. I appreciate you. I trust your divine soul's guidance. Please look within. And it's a light worker's version of the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono. But it's very powerful, very, very powerful and effective. So I would say also include that in this whole mix as you're doing those conversations with the family members at the table.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being interested in learning on how to live your light more fully and freely with emotional freedoms that you haven't even yet begun to dream of. And that gives you the courage and clarity to live your divine soul purpose. Now, just so that I play well with the algorithms here on YouTube, be sure to like the video. Please leave me a comment because I do love more two-way conversations, and subscribe if you want to stay in touch with any of the new material that I'm putting out there.